More than 2,100 lives lost over a decade on Long Island roads.
We were told that she was killed in an accident along the other two kids.
Families torn apart. Among the factors contributing to the deadly problem, drunk or drug driving, speeding, aggressive driving, and dangerous intersections.
It's a pain that is just undescribable. Everyone cries every day. We will never get to see him graduate.
While families grieve the loss of loved ones, Newsday has gone in search of answers as to what can be done to save lives in the future on Long Island's dangerous roads.
Good evening. I'm Newsday transportation reporter Alfonso Castillo, and we're all here tonight to start the discussion of what can be done to make Long Island's roads safer for all of us. Joining us for that conversation, the panel of experts we put together here, beginning on the far left, is Senior Manager of Public Affairs at AAA, Robert Sinclair. Alyssa Kyle, Placemaking Director at Vision Long Island. Mary Tanner-Richter, Deputy Commissioner for Traffic Safety and Investigations at the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. Rob Limoges, Director of the Office of Traffic Safety and Mobility at the New York State Department of Transportation, and Major Christopher Cassell with New York State Troopers. Thank you all so much for being with me tonight. I'll also point out that we've got some Newsday journalists also here who've worked on our Dangerous Roads project for most of the year, and other experts here in the audience, including Cynthia Brown, Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. We've also got family of people we've lost to Long Island dangerous roads, and we've got all of you, and there'll be an opportunity for all of you to weigh in also. So let's begin with this question. So the idea here is to find solutions for Long Island's dangerous roads, but I guess we should begin with, what does success look like, right? When you're talking about a region with 3 million people, more than 2 million registered vehicles, what does it even mean to fix Long Island's dangerous roads? And why don't we start with Robert at the end?
That's hard to say. We unfortunately are at a level of acceptance of road deaths and injuries. We were talking back in the green room that in the average year there are around 40,000 fatalities throughout the country. Imagine if that was happening on airplanes. That'd be like one and a half 747s going down every week. All the airplanes would be grounded, there'd be investigations, that would not be tolerated. But we are in this country tolerant of this high level of fatalities and injuries. We have to have a major culture change so that we do not tolerate these things. We are, among the industrialized nations, one of the worst around the world as far as rates, crash rates, fatality rates per 100,000 population. And it is unacceptable. We have to change our mindset. Bottom line.
Alyssa, I know you've worked on this. What do you see as, I talk about realistic solutions, but do we even need to aim for realistic? I mean, or do you go all in and say, let's eliminate traffic deaths altogether?
Yeah, I would, that would be ideal. Probably not likely, but I would say success would be something where you feel comfortable letting your kid walk to school. You feel comfortable with your elderly grandmother walking to the grocery store. Have a place where roads aren't threatening and fear-inducing, where you feel comfortable that you know that, just getting around your own community, you're not taking your life into your hands.
Commissioner, your thoughts on what a solution could look like, or what success would look like?
I think success is 0 deaths on the roadway. I think that to shoot for anything less than that is unacceptable. It's going to take us forever to get there maybe, but we always have to have that as the goal. And that would be success for me.
What do you think about what success could look like?
Yeah, I have to agree strongly with Mary on this. And if you can't set that high bar, it makes it really difficult to make progress. And one of the things that we've done recently, collaboratively with our safety partners in our strategic highway safety plan, is to set a 0 deaths goal. And part of that process in achieving that goal is, how we change the way we look at operating as partners in safety and use more of a safe systems approach. And what I mean by safe systems is looking at this problem and understanding, like what Mary said, deaths and serious injuries should be unacceptable to all of us. And humans make mistakes. And responsibility is shared among all of us. And safety should be proactive. So, to me, success means implementing that type of approach and working together to create safe roads and safe road users and safe speeds and safe vehicles and understanding that these things all have to come together for success.
To agree with my fellow panelists here, the goal of shooting for 0 deaths obviously should be the goal. But in addition to that, you should also shoot for, when we're driving down the highways, as everybody in this room does, myself included, you're not seeing that type of behavior, that aggressive driving of people driving across barriers, speeding on the shoulders, and engaging in very dangerous behavior. We would like to see the behavior change and the good decisions being made from behind the wheel so we can move forward with attempting to achieve this goal of 0 deaths.
When you talk about 0 deaths, that sounds a lot like what they call Vision Zero, which is kind of this all-hands-on-deck approach to addressing this problem. It's been adopted in cities all over the world, including our neighbor to the west, New York City, and they've had great results, right? I mean, I know Queens Boulevard is much transformed from the boulevard of death that it was years ago. Hoboken has now gone 8 years without any fatalities on its roads. Is it too much to ask for to have, and I know Brookhaven and some other municipalities have been looking for it, but Melissa, I'll ask you, is it too much to hope for an island-wide Vision Zero?
I mean, we have so many municipalities on Long Island, so, getting all those ducks in a row, but I think we've gotten complete streets policies maybe 12 years ago. That was an earlier iteration of like a Vision Zero. And most of the towns and both counties of Long Island have adopted those policies. So, taking it to that next level, to actually really work on the goal of 0 deaths, not just making streets for all, but really looking at bringing deaths down, hopefully to 0, I think could be done. But it would be a challenge given how many different municipalities and entities we work with.
Alfonso, it's also very difficult because of the physical environment. When there's some sort of safety problem, we try to engage in one of the, or all of the 3 E's, education, enforcement, and engineering. And some of the roads are configured differently. So to have a one-size-fits-all approach for all of Long Island probably wouldn't work because of all the different configuration of roadways. You'd have to go individual roadway by roadway to configure it in a way that would make it safer. That's going to be difficult to do. It's going to be expensive to do.
Yeah. I mean, this issue of bureaucracy, it sounds like, to some extent, there's a reason why it exists, and it's because Long Island is not just one region that's the same, right? Lots of variations from municipality to municipality. But wouldn't it begin with at least a commitment from every level, right?
I think we all have to get in a room. Everybody, all the stakeholders have to get in a room and decide that we're going to commit ourselves to doing this island-wide. And then we have to approach municipality by municipality, roadway by roadway, intersection by intersection in order to make that happen. It's a tough, tough task. Probably it would be easier to change the attitude of drivers. Oh, the roads are bad. All right, change the driver's attitude so that they aren't driving on roads in a way that they were not designed for. We do aggressive driving studies, and we did one back in 2016 and looking at the behaviors that drivers engage in. We asked them, what are you doing? And about 80%, 79% admitted to speeding, tailgating, cutting people off, honking at other drivers, yelling, confronting them. We revisited that study from 2016 this past September, and the number went from 79% of those who admitted engaging in aggressive driving to 96%. Everybody is doing it, and we have to stop it. What was most disturbing about the most recent report is that there's a new category. 11% of drivers admit to having rammed or bumped another vehicle. What are we doing? And it is interesting in comparing the 16 study to the recent study. We in the Northeast are most prone to yelling at other drivers, making gestures, honking the horn at them. I don't know what it is about the Northeast that makes us prone to that. Maybe it's a New York thing and it's spread throughout. But there are certain behaviors that are typical to our region that might not be typical to others. But everybody, it seems, is an aggressive driver. You have to get the attitude out there, change the attitude of drivers so that if the road is not configured for a certain driving style, they know that they shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that cultural part of the problem is kind of the toughest nut to crack, because you can't just sort of legislate to change culture, change attitudes. Yeah. Newsday launched its year-long Dangerous Road series in March with the story of Amir Porterfield, a 15-year-old boy who was struck by a car while crossing Sunrise Highway.
I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It's a pain that is just indescribable. Everyone cries every day. We will never get to see him graduate.
15-year-old Amir Porterfield from Copiague was walking home from a volleyball game at his high school one evening in 2023. Police say the freshman was hit by 2 vehicles while crossing Sunrise Highway here at this crosswalk. When his mother hadn't heard from him for hours, his family went out searching.
When she told me that he's not answering his phone,
I was really nervous.
I called him. Right after that, my hands started sweating. My anxiety kicked in.
I just seen police in the middle of the street. I just knew something bad happened.
Amir's family is here with us tonight, including his mother, Aisha Kiles. Thank you so much for being here. I've got a 15-year-old boy at home. I can't imagine what this was like for you. If you would be up for it, I'm going to ask you to step up to the mic and tell us what you think is a solution that we could start to look for. I mean, yours might be one of the most important voices here.
But hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I think it's important. I'm just going through this experience. I've never thought about a lot of things, and then after this terrible tragedy, just sat down and thought about a lot of things. I don't think that I've ever said I grew up in Long Island my whole entire life. I was a person needing to visit the city, but I don't think we ever told our kids how to cross the street. It's not a conversation that's had. The importance of ways to make eye contact with the drivers and certain kind of things. I just don't think that that's talked about a lot when it's presented. There's a lot of kids who go to school, especially if you live in a district in less than a mile, a bus isn't offered to the children. I think the lack of safety on how to cross the street for children, that was a big thing for me. Just never talked about in my home, even when I was a kid growing up. I know we as parents now are more stringent and on top of our children than maybe our parents were back in the day. If you think about it, we were walking to school, we were outside. Your parents said, come home when the street lights were on. I'm an avid, I follow my kid. I'm iPhone, find me. I'm tracking you 24/7. Because of that feature is a way how I found my son. In an instance, immediately. Without that, I probably would have not known where my child was for a very, very long time. And I just think bringing awareness to people in general, especially children, on how to cross the roads are very important. Where my son was hit and killed at the intersection, there has been multiple deaths. Prior to my son getting hit and killed, probably 2 months before, someone was killed in that same exact intersection. I know personally, after everything that I've done, there is bad lighting over there on the roads. After so many deaths there, I just don't understand why there's not a camera there. It's just the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and anything that I can bring awareness to people, I will try to do. My family is devastated. Our lives have changed drastically, and it's just a horrible, horrible feeling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Director Limoges, maybe I'll send this to you. More than 80 pedestrians and cyclists are killed each year on Long Island. Amir was one of them. What can be done to protect people like Amir?
Well, First of all, my condolences to you and your family. Thank you for coming here to share your story. I think it's really important. What can be done? I think some things that you suggested are really important. How are we teaching children in school? Is there a program now to educate people about how to cross safely? I think that's something that can be done. As far as the Department of Transportation or other local highway departments, looking at the operations of our intersections and how they function. That is something we do each year through a screening analysis of looking at where crashes are occurring and trying to be proactive. But notifying the department if, say, there's oftentimes there could be a problem with a push button, and if you push a button and expect it to be a walk signal and there's not a walk signal, there could be a problem with that button. And people aren't patient. They think it's not working, and they may take a risk that they shouldn't take. So reporting incidents of equipment that may not be working or a street light that's out helps us repair those things as soon as we can. We try to use data to identify proactively where we can, but many times these pedestrian crashes are somewhat random. There's not a lot of hot spots that we can go and address things. But certainly, I think those are a few things that we could do.
Well, some places we do know, right? I mean, Newsday identified the most dangerous intersections on Long Island, and I got to visit a lot of them. And what was incredible for me to see was that some of these intersections didn't have as much as a crosswalk or a working walk, don't walk. So I would think that's a good starting point, addressing those.
Sure. The State Department of Transportation operates many of the roads, but not all the roads on Long Island. So I know that many of our intersections are equipped. We made it a point to equip all of our intersections with countdown timers and backplates and things to make those intersections more pedestrian friendly, markings and things like that. But there are programs to help locals also do similar planning. One thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if this is a good time to bring this up, but the department does have a program to support local safety plans. This is something where communities can work together to evaluate where the crashes may be occurring, whether there's crash patterns, and prioritize actions that they could take within that community to address these things. There's funding available through the department. There's $10 million actually available for this program. And if communities would like to learn more about that, they can reach out to the department.
Robert, I saw you perk up there. I know education is one of the E's, and she touched on something that I haven't thought about. I mean, I help my kid with homework, and I'm sometimes befuddled by the kind of things that he's required to learn in school. But something as simple as how to safely cross the street isn't taught.
We take education, road education, very seriously at AAA. We have a program where instructors go into high schools to driver's ed programs, and we have two components that we teach them: handling driving emergencies, what to do if your vehicle breaks down. We see people who are injured and killed when they're broken down by the side of the road. We see tow truck drivers, first responders killed when they're broken down by the side of the road. We teach them how to maintain the vehicle so you don't wind up in that situation in the first place. And we do that, and we also have something called shifting gears, and it's all about driving impaired, driving under the influence of alcohol, and more these days with marijuana being legalized, it seems everywhere. People are driving under the influence of marijuana and alcohol. A lot of folks have a false sense of security. The message has gotten out there about alcohol for the most part, that you should not drive under the influence of alcohol. But marijuana, it's still not quite there, and a lot of people are under the false impression that they might even be better drivers when they're under the influence of marijuana. And studies have shown, tests have shown that you're not a better driver, you just lost your inhibitions. You don't care. You're not worried about the consequences of what might happen. And so that leads to problems. But additionally, we have programs where we go into elementary schools and we start with 6, 7, 8-year-olds and teach them about road safety, how to cross the streets, I remember a song when I was growing up. It said, you know, don't cross the street. Don't cross the street in the middle of the block. Use your eyes to see, use your ears to hear. Walk up to a corner when the coast is clear and wait until the light turns green. So there are things that we can do to reinforce that message. I'll sing it for you. But we have to start at a very, very early age. That educational component is very important. And all of you should know that we can come to a group. We'll go to libraries, we'll go to community groups, and we'll have these seminars. They are free of charge. You go on the website, AAA.com, and we will have an educational program set out for the particular group you might have, young, middle-aged, older people. We're happy to do it because education, getting this information about how you should be a safe pedestrian and a safe driver, you can't start early enough. If you start with young people, you make them good, safe pedestrians as they're young, they'll be good, safe pedestrians and drivers as teenagers, and they'll be good, safe pedestrians and drivers as adults. But we have to start now.
Yeah.
And we also, I'm sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
We also have to recognize, though, that just children cognitively, they have poor impulse control, and, some of their reaction times and stuff, you could teach them well, but you have to be forgiving and understanding that, they may not always act rationally. They're kids,
Mm-hmm.
So, a mistake shouldn't be fatal. Just because, our brains aren't done developing until we're 25 years old. So, kids and teenagers don't necessarily always make the best decisions, even if we do teach them well, which can help, certainly, at least knowing what they should be doing, but actually doing what they should be doing, not always there.
Yeah.
I think we take for granted what we think people should know.
Mm-hmm.
We did a study out in Troy, New York, at an intersection where we observed for like a 4-hour period 17 different groups of pedestrians that wanted to cross the street at this busy intersection. Not one person in any of those 17 groups pushed the button. That was
really. I think there's an assumption that they don't work, or they don't do anything.
They don't work or whatever, but it was literally feet away from them, and they don't understand what happens when you push the button. Well, when you push the button, you get more time to cross, and so we got to go back to basics. I think, like you were saying, and help people understand, like, yeah, maybe the button looks dirty, or or you don't think it works, but push it anyways, It's going to help you cross the street.
And there's ways to make this fun, right? It doesn't have to be preachy. I was just talking to Cynthia before we came in here, and you just visited a school, right? And I got to do one of these things where they create like an obstacle course in your school, and I got to wear drunk goggles and drive a car through the obstacle course. So this could actually be exciting for young people, and I imagine as important as anything they'll learn in school. So we reached out to, or I should say readers reached out to us with some questions and comments, some of which we're going to share with you tonight. The first comes from Dawn, and Dawn says, I think there should be more roads where right on red is prohibited. A lot of pedestrians are being injured or killed because drivers care more about quickly making a right on red and not paying attention to who could be crossing. And Commissioner, on this, what is the reality of changing the rules of the road in any particular place? I know Staten Island seems to be considering enacting right on red, where the rest of the city is not. But something like that's been ingrained in Long Island for so long, is there any hope of changing that?
There's always hope, right? We wouldn't be here if there wasn't. But it takes people like you coming here and talking to people like us about the problem. I was a prosecutor for 20 years doing vehicular crimes before I came to my new position. And what I have found in trying to get legislation changed and to make a difference is they didn't care what a prosecutor thought. They don't necessarily care what a state deputy commissioner thinks. But what makes a difference are you, the victims here, the advocates that unfortunately, I was just at a symposium earlier on the trying to change the drug driving laws because so many problems there. And there were many victim advocates there, and one of the things that I said is every time you come, I think that if you haven't been experiencing or interacting with those people, you don't know, like, it is an emotional drain for all of you to be here and to share the worst of the worst that has happened to you, and you're doing it with the hopes of making those changes so another family isn't sitting next to you. And first of all, I want to thank every victim advocate here tonight for doing that, because the strength that you have to do that and put yourselves out here is immense. And that is what is needed, though, to push the needle for a lot of these things, the initiatives to get changed. It unfortunately takes the face, of a beautiful child that's not here, or a loving parent or grandparent or wife or husband, whatever. Unfortunately, that, to me, is what is needed to kind of push the needle. And then just the other thing, you have great ideas for getting into the schools. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that the schools are having to do more with less. They're given more and more requirements, so other things are shrinking down. I mean, my kids don't even learn cursive. I guess another story for another day, right? But it blew my mind when that isn't a thing. So I think one of the things we need to do, now, Governor's Traffic Safety Committee is made up of 13 different agencies. State education's one of those. So this is something that, to hear these things, we can talk to our partners and say, hey, listen, what is it that you have going on? Because I may not necessarily know, as a member of DMV, what they have going on, but they're part of the conversation. And if we can't get into the schools the way we want to, then what are other avenues? Because I'll agree, you got to get to them younger. The younger, the better. Preschool, wherever it is, because they do know. They learn. And they're little sponges early on before they've learned to talk back and to think that no adult knows anything about anything. And I say that with an 18-year-old and a soon-to-be 15-year-old who, I live in the traffic safety world. I've gone to the crashes, and yet, that's mom. So we do need to get to them younger and really rely heavily on our victim advocates to get that change.
Yeah. Another major issue on our roads is people driving under the influence of drugs. Robert just touched on it, including marijuana. Our investigation revealed in 2023, 18% of deadly accidents statewide involved drivers under the influence. On Long Island, it was 24%. And I think we've all been in a car. You could be moving 65 miles an hour. You shouldn't be going that fast on the Southern State Parkway. And with your windows closed, a car passes by and you get that waft of marijuana, which is, it really speaks to how powerful it is. I know Peter, who is here, Peter Gill, has done some reporting on this and the challenges of testing. And Peter, can you tell us anything about why it's why it isn't as easy as it is with alcohol, where you could just show up with a breathalyzer and nail somebody for driving drunk?
Sure, and I think Ms. Tanner-Richter was talking about advocacy campaign you attended today for the drug driving bill, which would change New York from being a state that has a set list of drugs that are illegal to drive on to being one that defines drugs more broadly as an impairing substance. And something like 45 states have that broader definition, including places like California and Vermont, that you wouldn't think of as being kind of, much stricter in terms of drugs, having, earlier legalized marijuana and whatnot. So the proposed legislation that, prosecutors on Long Island are advocating for would create a broader definition that would allow police to press criminal charges, even if someone refuses a drug test. And right now it's quite difficult to press criminal charges if someone refuses a drug test. So, but if I missed anything, or if you want to expand on that, please go ahead.
Oh my goodness, how much time do we have tonight? Because the drug driving laws are so antiquated and leads to such frustration because, and one of the things I said today, you're absolutely right. The problem is, for some reason, New York has decided we need to have a list of drugs that if you have taken one of those drugs that's on a list and you're impaired and you drive, then you can be charged. But if you choose to take a substance that is not on that list, which dust off is one, people are huffing with greater frequency now than I think ever, you cannot be charged. That only if it's on a list, and the list just can never keep up. You know, as soon as a new drug gets put on this public health law list, all the manufacturers have to do is tweak one ingredient in it, and now that is no longer the same drug, and now you can drive without any sort of consequences. And that's the biggest piece. There's a lot to the legislation. If you refuse to submit to an oral fluid swab, or you refuse to submit to a drug recognition expert evaluation, then there are consequences to that they currently aren't. So what we've been seeing is that there have been more and more people refusing, because if I don't have to show you what's in my blood, then you can't prosecute me. And in New York, the only way, if someone is not seriously injured or killed in an incident, and I've heard I just can't help myself. I heard the word accident used multiple times today, and each time it's like a stab to my gut, because there's nothing accidental about what we're talking about here. It's a crash, it's an incident, it's a wreck, it's anything other than an accident. So I just have to put it out there. Words matter, right? And we need to really shine a light on that. But unless someone is involved in a serious personal injury crash or a fatal, they can refuse to give you blood, breath, urine, saliva. Those are the items we can get out of you, but you have a right to refuse. And if you refuse that, there is nothing law enforcement can do, there is nothing a prosecutor can do to make you tell us what is in your blood. The only time that's not true is if someone's seriously injured or killed, then we can get a warrant to get your blood sample. However, there are other challenges, because maybe if it's not in 3306, then you can't be charged under the DWI sections. Yeah. So much, it's just so frustrating, and it's so unnecessary, because I will guarantee anyone who's in this room who has lost a loved one or has been seriously injured themselves by an impaired driver, did you care what the substance was that the driver was under the influence of when they hurt you or hurt or killed a loved one?
Major Castillo, I wanted to go to you. You're the law enforcement here on the panel. It's you and your troopers that are dealing with this in real time. How much harder has it gotten addressing this? It's a whole new world out there. And what are the strategies that troopers are using to try to address the problem?
First and foremost, I want to say, if someone decides to, get behind the wheel after drinking, after getting high, that's a choice. It's plain and simple. It's not a mistake. Mistakes do happen. Crashes do happen. But getting behind the wheel while you're intoxicated or impaired by a drug is a choice. So back to what I had said before, we want to change people's mindset and people's outlook on these topics. We need a different mindset when it comes to that type of behavior. As far as the state police is concerned, the two things that we focus a lot on are obviously enforcement, which is typically what most people think of when they think of police, law enforcement. We're out there, we're pulling cars over, we're writing tickets, making arrests. And of course, we do all of that. But the other part of what we do is the education component. And as you've heard multiple times tonight, we want to hit the younger generation, the students, the kids, before they get to driving age, to give them the information that they need to be safe drivers. As a parent myself, I have a 16-year-old at home who's just about to get her permit. And obviously, I have the same concerns that everybody in this room has. So when I have to teach her how to drive, I have to teach her to drive defensively, teach her how to look around what's going on around her, because she can do everything right and follow all the rules, but everybody around her might not be. So what I want to see happen is getting a change in the behavior of people driving. And we do that through education, like I said, but also through our enforcement efforts. When a trooper or a police officer pulls over a car that's doing, say, 90 miles an hour on the Southern State Parkway, which is extremely fast, that trooper essentially could have prevented a fatal accident or a serious accident from occurring just by making that stop. That person might now also remember going forward, I don't want to get a ticket again. So that's a metric that's difficult to manage and to track on, because it's the unknown. We don't know what the end result could have possibly been. So what our troopers try to do is obviously focus on aggressive driving. We do high visibility patrol, making sure that people see us out there. We want to make sure that when our troopers are out there, they're looking for the things that cause the most serious collisions and serious crashes out there, which is aggressive driving, drunk driving, speeding. Those are the core behaviors that we see that cause most of these serious crashes.
Staying on the topic of driving under the influence, we've got a comment from Philip, and Philip says, he was very passionate. I remember reading this email. Once someone is caught driving under the influence, there should be an immediate loss of license for at least 6 months to 1 year. There should be no more chances unless they go through a rigorous educational experience. I know over the years there have been all kinds of proposals to toughen DWI laws. I remember talking to somebody when I was covering court, an expert on this, who talked about, the real problem here is that to some extent drinking and driving is legal, right? You just up to a point, and you leave people making this calculation in their head. Did I have too much? Am I still under that legal limit? So is there any thought, any hope of just eliminating it, making it completely illegal to drink and drive? Is that something we could strive for?
I think people should be self-policing. I know I police myself, and my limit is 0. If I have no drinks, I'll drive. But if I have one, I'm not driving.
Right.
And people need to do that. And I remember being in Florida once, and a taxi cab went by, and it had one of those illuminated signs on the top, and it said, "Have you been drinking? Call me. I'm cheaper than a DUI." And when you consider the consequences of getting busted driving under the influence, it's something that would make you think. Your insurance is going to go up, you're going to go to court, you're going to have fines, you've got lawyers, you've got all these things that are going to happen. It's a very, very easy decision to not drink and drive. A car is as far away as your phone. You've got ride share, just call up, leave your vehicle. I remember I went to visit a friend, we started drinking, I left my car where it was, and went home. I came back a couple of days later, picked the car up. I had tickets all over it, and I think they added up to a couple $100. It's cheaper than a DUI, much, much cheaper. So we have to have this self-imposition of limits on ourselves and realize that driving under the influence is, under any circumstances, is not acceptable. It's not good. You're impaired, and we have a program called Managing Time and Space. And one of the things that we talk about is the fact that you don't realize that these things are happening.
Yeah. I remember when I put on those drunk goggles for that, they were useful in simulating the physical effects of being drunk, not seeing well. What it can't simulate is the decision making, right? That puts you in that car even when you know better, right?
Can I just, I just want to make a point with regard to that, you can drive if you're below the legal limit. That's actually not true. I mean, there are two different sections of the law. There's one that's a .08 that you can't, if you're an 08 or higher, that's DWI. But there's also a section that's 1192.3 that's driving while intoxicated. So you could be at a much lower number and still not be okay to drive. And I think that there's this misunderstanding of what the law is, and people think, well, because I'm not an 08, I'm good to go. That's not true. There is no number. There is no, once you've had one, I agree. I think you've already started to impair your abilities to think and to act as a reasonable and prudent person behind the wheel. But that's just misinformation out there that if you're below an 08, you're good to go.
The combination of drug driving and speeding is a deadly mix. One of our reports focused on a high-speed crash that ended 4 lives and changed the life of one survivor forever.
A driver high on drugs, speeding over 100 miles per hour, rammed a car stopped at a red light in East Massapequa.
The crash killed 4 people, 3 of them children. Michael McManus was in this car when the crash happened right next to him. We showed him the video for the first time.
Wow. Okay. Wow. All right. So I'm actually...
Escaping death by a few feet has had a lasting effect on Michael.
All of a sudden, it felt like a bomb went off and, windows shattered, glass was everywhere, and there was just a giant explosion. To this day, I'm sitting at an intersection and I do have I almost can close my eyes and feel like an impending impact or like just an explosion or like I'm anticipating a bomb going off.
Michael McManus, the man who had a front row seat to that tragedy, is here with us tonight. Thank you for joining us, Michael. I don't know if you'd be up for saying a few words. You were at a loss for words there when you watched that video back. You still at a loss for words now, or what do you think when you look back on that day?
I was very articulate in the beginning there. Thank you for doing this, and everyone for being here. I think there's been a lot of interesting issues and insights so far. I think from an alcohol standpoint, the biggest problem, and I'm someone who formerly had an issue with alcohol. I haven't had a drink in 5.5 years personally. No, that's all right. When you are under the influence, you're not making decisions. So yes, I 100% agree, by the way, that it is a choice. The problem is the person making that choice is operating with a faulty operating system. So I don't know how you prevent that. I mean, for folks who have had DUIs and then, you have the self-starting breathalyzer in the car. I mean, that's a freedom issue. You can't ask everyone to do that. Unfortunately, I think there's more questions than answers at this point, but I think the first step is doing things like this on a more regular basis. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah. So major speed was obviously a big factor in the crash that Michael was involved in. We've all been driving, and we were watching some videos earlier of people just flying by. And when you've got a car that is moving at or above the speed limit, and you've got these dash cam videos that we were watching, and you see cars flying by them, I mean, do the math of how fast they're going. And we've all been in that situation where we've been one of the cars that's kind of a witness to it. And you think, where's a cop when you need one? And we've done some reporting on this, on enforcement, number of summonses given out, lag behind some other parts of the state. What are the challenges of getting Long Islanders to slow down?
So I think, first and foremost, as you already said, speeding is one of the top contributors of the serious crashes that we investigate as law enforcement, state police. However, I think, we talked about culture before. Long Island, we're a very fast-paced society. We're a suburb of New York City. We're constantly on the go. That's the mindset. If you travel around the country, even different parts of the state, things move a little bit slower. So I believe that there's a lot of people that look at speed as more of a minor traffic infraction as opposed to a serious risk factor. And back to what I said before is changing the behavior, changing the mindset, getting that education out there, doing things like we're doing now, bringing to the attention as you all have the serious accidents that happen, where speed is one of the major contributing factors. That's the biggest thing that I see is trying to change that mindset, which is a very difficult thing to do. So as law enforcement, we're going to continue with the education component, getting out there, getting to the community meetings, getting out to the schools, but also with our enforcement, making sure that we're getting out there. So like you said, where is there a cop when you need them? Obviously, we are out there, but we can't be everywhere all the time, unfortunately. One good thing I can say at this point, as far as the state police is concerned, I have 24 years on the job, and at the current time, we're actually pretty close to being at full staff as far as our allocated amount of troopers out there. We're never going to be full staff because there's always people coming and going, things like that. But that we have the support of the governor's office and the legislature that allowed us to do that. So we're going to continue to be out there and do our job. But one thing I wanted to touch on that you talked about regarding road rage. It happens more often than you think. So my request from you and the public is to stay out of that type of behavior. And if you see it, call it in, report it to us. That's our job. We're trained in it. We have the law behind us to do what we need to do. Let us know what's going on. Now, we can take that information. We're going to respond out to the scene, but it also is something that we can do an investigation on later and follow up with the investigation to attempt to make an arrest. The last thing that I want to see, that we want to see as law enforcement, is somebody getting into a road rage situation where somebody gets seriously injured or killed, because you don't know who you're dealing with, if the person has a gun or a weapon or what their mindset is. So please, call it in, let us handle it, and we will do everything in our power to bring the person involved to justice.
Alfonso, you mentioned speed. And I think back to some tests that we did with the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. We did crash testing of vehicles at 3 different speeds, 40, 50, and 56 miles per hour. Now, if you look at a vehicle from the side, say you look at a car, a sedan, you'll see there's the passenger compartment, and sticking out in the front is the part with the engine, sticking out the back is the part with the trunk. That front and rear part is known as a crumple zone. Now, in the testing that we did, we crashed a vehicle at 40 miles per hour, no intrusion into the driver's compartment, no problem. Crashed at 50 miles per hour, same thing, no problem. Just going up 6 miles per hour, from 50 to 56 miles per hour, major difference. The passenger compartment was intruded. The driver, it was a crash test dummy, it was estimated that if that was a driver, they would have had traumatic brain injury. The dashboard collapsed and crushed the legs of the crash test dummy. And this is just 6 mile per hour difference. So it just goes to illustrate what an important factor speed is. As you go faster, you're more than likely to get very, very hurt, injured, and killed if you get into a crash. It's something that we have to keep in mind. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration releases its data. Preliminary data earlier this year said that 17,000 people were killed the first 6 months of the year, and they, whoopee, it was, I think 1,500, I'm sorry, 15,000? No, 15,000 versus 18,000 last year for the same period. And they were like celebrating. I don't think it's time to break out the champagne because we're still talking about a lot of people that killed. But they say there are 4 factors in fatalities, and speed is number 1. There's also being impaired, there's being distracted, and amazing to me is that people aren't wearing their seatbelts, the most basic of safety devices in vehicles, and folks are foregoing them, and they're paying with their lives as a result. So we keep that in mind. Speed, very important. In talking about distraction, everybody thinks about cell phones, and of course that's probably the major distractor, but look at what's happening in new vehicles.
Oh yeah.
You've got dashboards that are computer screens. If you're playing a particular artist's song, you can see their picture up there.
And you lost that tactile, feeling where you don't have to look. You could just press a button.
Exactly.
Now you've got to look because it's all a screen.
Exactly. We've gone from buttons and knobs to these touch-sensitive things, and testing has shown that a lot of times Consumer Reports, they don't work.
Yeah.
So here's something you might be just trying to change the audio or maybe change the temperature for the climate control, and now you're occupied with this thing when your attention should be on the road. So I think that's a very, very disturbing trend that's happening in vehicles. I used to write the test drives for our vehicles, and it got to a point where so many functions were being put on vehicles, they started taking the knobs off. There were just too many of them, and going with these tactile things. Now, folks want rolling computers as their vehicles, and it's a very, very bad trend. I think we should be decontenting vehicles, going back, taking all that stuff off, and making the vehicles...
Give me my cassette back.
Simple, 8-track.
Yeah. Unless you want to say something?
Just to go back to the speeding, you're talking about the impacts of different crashes at different speed levels. That's for folks inside a car where you've got airbags and crumple zones and that. If you think about the speeds for folks who are not inside a car, someone crossing the street, riding a bike, that sort of thing, you can have catastrophic crashes at much lower speeds. They look at, obviously there's variation due to size of vehicle and age of the person, that sort of thing. But if you get hit by a car that's doing about 20 miles an hour, you're 90% chance you're probably going to survive that crash. If you get hit by a car doing 30 miles an hour, it's about 50-50 whether or not, depending on the conditions of the crash. But if you get hit by a car doing 40 miles an hour, your chance of survival of that crash is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10%.
Yeah.
So those are, and routinely, 30 may be the typical speed for neighborhood roads, but routinely people are going over that in people's neighborhoods where kids may be playing or, people walking their dogs, that sort of thing. And the stories that people hear about are these outrageous stories, like someone going over 100 miles an hour on Sunrise Highway. But, even much lower speeds in neighborhoods and in places where there are lots of people out walking and biking, even at much lower speeds, you can still have these catastrophic crashes when you don't have that infrastructure of a car protecting you.
Yeah. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to, I agree with all the comments you folks have made, and I think it was mentioned earlier that people tend to drive the speed that they're comfortable at in the environment that they're at. So if we want people to slow down, there's a few different things we can do. We can hammer them with enforcement, right? You could set up a speed trap or some other aggressive enforcement. You could use technology. Maybe there's the speed feedback signs. I think people have seen. We've seen those be pretty effective at slowing people down. It's a practical thing that you could do to slow people down. But for a long-term change, the roadway itself needs to change some, and that's where traffic calming measures come in. It could be something as simple as narrowing a lane from 12 feet to 11 feet. There's studies that show that has a significant reduction in the speed people travel in that situation. There's more involved tactics like bulb outs and raised crossings or road diets and things like that can be done. They're more costly, but these are things that need to be explored for how to make a permanent change to the way people drive. So
I think that gets to our next question, which I anticipate there might be less agreement on, and it comes from Daniel, and he says, automated enforcement is historically disliked on Long Island. However, it works elsewhere. It eliminates law enforcement interaction with drivers and leaves nothing open to interpretation. Why is there so much resistance here on Long Island? And I'll open up to any of you, but Long Island has tried some of this, right? Automated enforcement. I know we did it with school zones a number of years back in Nassau County, and it went over like a lead balloon, right? And
I think it's being generous.
Yeah, and for all the folks who will come forth in support of these, you might have 10 times as many. Crying foul if they got hit with one of these. So what is the reality of trying something like automated enforcement cameras for speed on Long Island?
I mean, I can just say it does take the subjectivity out of it with the enforcement end of things, but it also is, it's when things are enforced primarily by fine, then it hits people of different income levels differently. Yeah. Whereas, a $250 ticket for someone who's well off might be like, oh, oops, that sucks. Whereas $250 for someone of a lower income, that might mean they can't make rent that month. So it's not, while it's the enforcement may be evenly distributed, the impacts of that enforcement aren't necessarily felt the same way. And also in some ways, like you were saying with, the road design and stuff, in a road where if a road has a sign that says 30, but you can feel comfortable doing 50 on it because it's so wide, the lanes are wide, there's no sharp turns, that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, you're supposed to be doing 30, but sometimes you don't realize how much over you are because it doesn't feel. Yeah. So sometimes you may lose track.
Further east you go, like on Sunrise Highway, when you get into kind of the east end, it feels like 55 is barely a suggestion, and everybody is doing
flying
70
past
plus.
You,
yeah.
Right.
But that's unacceptable. Like, I just have to go back to, if there's a speed limit, there's a speed limit. And that goes back to, again, it's, making people have changes. Like, they have to think differently. Governor's Traffic Safety, we started an initiative this year, Drive Safe Long Island. And you should have seen, hopefully you've seen some signs throughout Long Island, because it hits every single program area. I mean, drive safe, that means don't drive high, don't drive impaired, don't speed, don't drive distracted. Like, we being the drivers, if you are making the decision, you're choosing to get behind the wheel, then you have to also choose consequences for not following what the laws are.
That's where enforcement comes in, right? I mean, and doesn't that go to this issue of automated enforcement? You could say that, well, the speed limit is what it is, but if there isn't somebody to stop them or a camera to stop them, what's the point?
Well, and right. That's why you need those enforcement measures, because we saw it with COVID. When the stops weren't being made, those speeds went up, those crashes went up, our fatals went up. When there's enforcement, whether it's through automated technology or our men and women getting out there on the roads, putting themselves at danger to make sure we're doing what we can, now our numbers are starting to come down. They're not where they need to be. We got a long way to go, but at least it's starting to, because there's that enforcement.
Yeah, Robert, as kind of the driver's representative here, how do you think automated camera enforcement would go over on Long Island?
If you're a responsible individual, it will work. You start getting the fines and they pile up, and you need to make a change in your behavior. But I cannot stop thinking about that lady in Brooklyn who was on Ocean Parkway doing 68 miles an hour and killed the mother and her 2 children and injured one of her children. Since 2023, from 2023 up to the point that she had to crash, her vehicle had 103 automated enforcement violations. Between automated enforcement and her being pulled over, she had more than 100 violations. She was still on the road. She would change the registration on the vehicle. She would just drive without registration. And she was so callous that while she was in jail, when you're in jail and you're talking to visitors, you're being recorded, and she's saying, well, I'm as much a victim as they were, and I can feign schizophrenia and I'll get off. That kind of attitude, when it's behind the wheel, is very, very dangerous. Now, she had 100 violations and she's still on the road. How does that happen? So you have to be a responsible person for that to work. And unfortunately, there's a lot of irresponsible people out there. And she got 9 years for killing those people. It's just stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning that that's allowed to happen.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One more comment on automated enforcement. DOT has been authorized to implement a program in our work zones, and we've been we're finishing our 3rd full year of deployments, and we've monitored over 6,000 work zones with mobile enforcement units. 25 million vehicles have passed through these work zones. 400,000 notices of liability to people that were traveling more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. Not just speeding, but more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. But we've seen some results. In 2025, there was a 30% reduction in speeding violations where we had these camera systems deployed, which means people are slowing down, which slower speeds means it's safer for our workers and it's safer for everybody in these work zones. So I think there is a bit of a success story. Our department is limited to only work zone deployments within our own work zones, but I think it's a tool that really needs to be considered.
Another factor contributing to our dangerous roads are their deteriorating condition, and that leads to a question we got from Kenneth, and Kenneth asks, why are so many of our roads in such disrepair? I am tired of hearing it's a New York State road, a town road, a county road. Also, lack of funds is no longer an acceptable excuse. This is kind of how the conversation started about how you've got all these different jurisdictions. You've got counties and villages and towns. And so it could be easy, I imagine, for somebody to pass the buck. How do we cut through all that red tape and bureaucracy and get some of these roads fixed?
Alyssa, I know you've dealt with this a lot. You just held a seminar on this last week.
Yeah, I mean, funding is part of it. A lot of times there's different funding streams, and you may be able to speak to this better than I can, but, sometimes it's project-based, so you get funding to, make this big improvement in this limited area, but then there's no additional funding built into the yearly budget for maintenance. Yeah. So some of it, is, things need to be repaved on a more frequent schedule, that sort of thing, which, the way, I'm not an expert on how all road funding happens, but there needs to be more maintenance built into. It's not just about new construction and expansion and that sort of thing. We need to, we need to properly fund what we've already got. I know there's been improvements as far as different materials used that are more durable, that sort of thing, but there needs to be more of a focus on making sure we have adequate money budgeted for ongoing maintenance, not just for new construction and expansion.
And anything you'd add on that, since the
Sure,
funding is coming from you?
I can add to that a little bit. Really, the way our capital program prioritizes things is on preservation of the assets that we have, because there's, I think, I can give you the accurate number later, but it's about 18,000 miles of road that DOT is responsible for, and there's a limited budget. So it's about preserving those assets that we have, doing, some of these projects aren't sexy. They're like crack sealing, right? Pothole filling, things like the basics to get to keep these things, the facilities operational as long as possible. But at the same time, you still have to be able to do projects and do some active transportation projects, for example, and be able to prioritize your budget and try to balance the need for basic maintenance and safety and operational improvements across the board.
Another question here from Dennis. He asks, how can we give the people on Long Island a platform where they can speak to the legislature and congressmen about strengthening the DWI, DUI, and hit-and-run laws? So, I think this gets to the frustration. A lot of people feel that their representatives aren't representing them, and that there isn't always the political will that's needed in Albany to get some of these changes done. Deputy Commissioner, what can you say about how some of this could be changed?
I feel the frustration. Again, just at that symposium in New York today, 20 years we're trying to get a fix to the drug driving laws, and we still haven't done it. So we feel the frustration, but what I think we're seeing this year is that we are getting more of our advocates, our victims are banding together, and that united voice means so much more and is going to, you have to just keep going, right? It's as hard as it is, don't stop. I would recommend, using MAD. MAD is a great, tool and an ally to our victim advocates to, again, collectively have that voice, as well as talk to your legislature, because they're having other people chirping in their ears about things that are concerning to them.
Right.
So it's really the squeakiest wheel, gets the grease, and it's continuing to push the message, even when it feels as though no one's listening. People are, but it is definitely, don't give up.
Yeah, if you were going to hold some kind of hearing about putting up a speed camera somewhere, you'd have a bunch of people coming out against it, so it's important to have that many more people coming out for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so we wanted to open it up to you all. I'll remind you all that in addition to our panel up here, we've got Cynthia Brown in the audience. We've got some Newsday reporters, a lot of knowledge here in the audience. I'm going to ask you to raise your hands if you have a question, and we'll come to you in the back. We started there.
I was just wondering if you could direct us to someone that could help us with the apps that are sending traffic the fastest and most fuel-efficient routes, which is taking, for example, traffic off of Route 110, where I believe the state spent over $53 million in reconfiguring the Northern State and Route 110 interchange project. And they're sending it down residential roads. So we are having high traffic from this area right here, where we're going to have the Melville overlay is going to be putting in thousands of apartments here. And it sends the traffic right now from Pine Lawn Road across 110 down Sweet Hollow Road to Jericho. If you're living in Green Lawn, it sends you all the way out of the way to come down Sweet Hollow or Round Swamp Road to get to this location. And so I'm just wondering if there's any help, with anybody here to correct this, because we have traffic going down a historic single-lane road with no traffic lights, so that makes it more fuel efficient. There are no shoulders. We have deer, and it's only a one-lane width road. So we've had multiple fatalities, and this isn't just there, but it's the residential roads are taking the traffic because people want to go the fastest route.
Yeah, having just made that detour yesterday on my way home, I can attest to, yes, I rerouted that way. But it's something I thought about, and maybe you'd be a good person to ask Major Casal. We talked about how technology kind of cuts both ways, and now you've got these apps that are steering you into residential neighborhoods. If there's a cop nearby, it'll warn you that a cop is nearby. So from the law enforcement standpoint, are you frustrated by what some of these apps do to driving habits?
Yes. I was actually thinking about it when we were hearing about it before regarding the apps and the automated enforcement. As you're driving, if you're using Waze or Google Maps and you're coming up to one of these red light cameras, it says red light camera. And you slow down and everything else, but it also, as she pointed out, reroutes traffic, which can cause a problem. Obviously the roads, I have nothing to do with the design of them, but they're designed to handle certain types of traffic and certain types of vehicles, like parkways are for cars, and the trucks go on the interstates and whatnot. And when you start disrupting that, it causes additional problems. Unfortunately, I wish I had a solution that I could recommend as far as that goes, but these apps and the companies that run them are independent companies, and they have rules that they need to follow within their arena, but unfortunately it doesn't fall into the law enforcement perspective as far as us being able to really do much about it. The only thing that we can do is continue our enforcement efforts, and be out there. So if someone's trying to be fuel efficient and drive on a road that's designed for lower speeds and is narrow, a one-lane road, and they're speeding down there, well, maybe we're going to get a trooper or a law enforcement officer in that area because we know it's a problem and start enforcing it. So maybe people will stop using that route and go the route they're either supposed to or an alternate route.
Yeah. Any other questions? Why don't we go right here to this gentleman?
Hello. Thank you for hosting. With respect, I have two comments. One's with respect to education. The town of Brookhaven has this thing called Safety Town for children, and my kids have been there, and it's great to teach your kids how to work through traffic with bicycles and walking. So where I see these big, huge parks and things being built, maybe focusing on incorporating that is a good idea for other locales and regions. That's the only one that I've seen around here. But, if you're going to spend $100,000 on a swing set, maybe spending that on a park facility that's going to educate our kids with something valuable is a good way to introduce that. That's one thing. And then the other question I have is my career has exposed me to vehicular safety and my own personal experiences. I've had loss. I'm sure many people have had loss in this room. But you all come from different areas and you have excellent statistics. 18% versus 24% of accidents in the rest of the state versus Long Island. So we've identified that additional 6% as our problem. So you have all these statistics and things like that, but the experience, what allows us to bring all that knowledge together? So like you have state, you have DOT, you have FMCSA, you have state trooper, you have AAA. What mechanism do we have to bring those parties together to maybe come up with an enforcement system that works on roads that are operated by multiple parties. You have, it's complex. I'm not asking for an answer, but that could be a board or a governor-led, campaign or something like that to create a commission that can maybe give us some solutions, particularly locally, even just on the island.
Can I
Sure.
take that? First of all, that's exactly what we're trying to do. The big push we've made is for collaboration, because what we've seen is a lot of siloed individual attempts to push the needle, but it doesn't work as well, right? But when you bring your partners in, like DOT, state police, we're bringing those groups together and trying to come up with the plans. What's been talked about a lot tonight is Long Island is very unique in that there are all these different little pockets of it, and what might be, an issue on this part of it isn't over here. So traffic safety boards are a huge asset, and that's one of the things too that both you can have, local ones as well as county, and then there's a state traffic safety board, and having those conversations and bringing some of the other players to those meetings to help push us forward. What do we want to do? How do we want to use the financial assets we have, and how can we best combine our funding? Governor's Traffic Safety, we receive funding from National Highway Traffic Safety Center or Safety Administration, and we push that out to our grantees. It can't supplant, it can't take away, and we're paying for something you would be doing yourself. But we use that funding. We've provided $2 million to our grantees on Long Island, and that's not including grant funding to the state police, broadcasters, and we have others that do things on Long Island but are not focused solely on it, with the hope that those partners, those grant partners, are doing exactly what we're talking about. Get together in the room to say, okay, what can we do together that's going to have the biggest impact? And then start there, and then just keep pushing forward.
Thank you. The gentleman in the green shirt.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having us here and giving us our community a voice. My name is Dennis O'Connor. I'm a victim service specialist with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I just want to let everyone know here that we are here to help you. If anyone who has been impacted by impaired drivers, they can reach us at 1-877-MAD-HELP. I've personally been impacted. My father was hit by a drunk driver, injured. And we've actually had, 2 years ago, we had a drunk driver crash into our front yard. So it's been bad, but if anybody needs anything, we are here to help you.
Thank you. Why don't we stay on that side? Gentleman right behind you. Yes.
My name is John Allen, and one thing I want to say is it's pretty ironic, because the epitome of the conditions of our roads is actually sitting right behind you. Look at the conditions of our roads.
Yeah. Not wrong.
But what I want to say is it's not to you, it's to us here. I spent 42 years in civil service, 30 of it was in law enforcement, so when I left, I didn't sit on my behind. I got active. So I am actually involved with fraternal order police. I just spent about a week in Miami with about 4,000 police officers from the country. These are some of the issues we talk about. I'm also in a local organization where I am on the legislative committee. So it's not what they're going to do to help us. What are we going to do? Because are we going to go home and just wait for the next thing? Get in touch with your elected officials. I had an issue. I spoke to my senator, actually two of them. They were very interested in hearing what we have to say. These are our elected officials. So get involved in organizations where you have an opportunity to speak to lobbyists, speak to legislators. They work for us. It's only going to change if we allow it to change. Run for office, do something. But if you leave it here, it's going to stay here. They can only be helped if we push to get the help. So don't leave here, get involved. Again, call your senator. They will listen to you. I had no problem. The senator called me up. I sat in the office. We sat there for about an hour or so. The previous senator did the same thing. There's a lot of lobby organizations, a lot of fraternal organizations we can all belong to. It's only going to change if we push it and don't leave it here. Get out there and fight for it. This is Long Island. It's one of the greatest places to live. And we need to protect ourselves as much as they're going to help us. We need to help ourselves as well. Get involved, and it'll get done.
To that point, I thought I'd call on Cynthia. You know, if anybody knows the power of advocacy and the difference that you can make, It's you again, Cynthia. Cynthia Brown is Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. They do a lot of terrific work.
I was just going to say, there are so many hindrances to doing, changing what everybody wants to change. But I think it would be a great idea if, as a group, you meet, we pick one project that could be successful, whether it's putting in a different curriculum in driver's ed, where there really isn't a curriculum. There was a lady who wrote a letter to Newsday who was a previous driver's ed teacher. It was like in the paper a week or two ago. Her suggestions were so succinct and easy to implement that you could have gone and followed one of her classes and just to see what kind of an impact it had on the children. Also, when you talk about trying to reach children and the classes are overwhelmed with so many other things that they're busy teaching, Long Beach, Long Island, and this is not driving, but it's swimming. They, many years ago, had such an incidence of drownings of young children because of their closeness to the beach that in third grade, like we do Safety City and New York City does programs for Safety Town for third graders, they taught swimming to third graders, and it virtually eliminated the number of deaths that were being caused by it. So if there's such simple things like road lighting. I don't even I'm not talking about traffic signals. Just street lighting for pedestrians. If people can't see you, they're going to hit you. And nobody in New York wears bright colored clothes. So they, if on a night like tonight and you are driving, the only light will be the reflection off the street from the rain in your headlights. And then you can't tell till the people are right on top of you. So it's really very hard. But there are things that, there are two examples, seatbelts, which now are, falling off. But that was a campaign that caught on and reduced the number of fatalities to like less than 10%. And the other one is the smoking campaign, which I believe was implemented under Mike Bloomberg, which is 3, mayoral terms ago, but it worked. But again, after a certain period of time, it falls off and you have to sort of, reinstitute it. But those commercials that are on television for don't smoke and what it does to you, some of these people who have had really bad experiences might be willing to talk about their experiences, and maybe it would change some people's minds.
Yeah.
Because we're talking to each other. We know it's not a good thing. So you need to reach the ones that, you don't talk to. So that's why I think shining the light on this is really a good thing.
Thank you so much. All right, why don't we go over here to the back quarter on the right.
I'm going to talk about Melville 110 Rulin Road. It is atrocious. I live here 26 years right by Costco. There's accidents there every other day. I can't go home. It backs up. I have to call about the traffic signal light at the intersection of 110 and Rulin because it's not always timed right. And it backs up from Rulin all the way to Pine Lawn Road. It's every single day, and worse now for the holiday. Where are Suffolk County police? They should be on 110. I live here. I do not see them at all. It's a free-for-all on 110, Rulin Road, Pine Lawn Road. It's dangerous.
You could address, this frustration of we just don't see enough police officers. And you kind of touched on it before, but what's the reality of putting a cop everywhere that there's a problem?
Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, even though the state police, we're getting close to 100% staffing, we can't be everywhere. It's just the reality. But we do the best we can from the state police perspective to do a combination of high visibility, so people do see us, but also we do some clandestine operations because there's times where we don't want you to see us, depending on what the circumstances are. The only recommendation I can give you at this point really is, obviously you've tried to call 911 and, okay. You might want to try maybe contacting the local precinct that covers the area.
We invited Suffolk Police here, and they didn't make it. Yeah. Anyhow, next question. Staying back there, the woman with the hand up right there. Oh, sir, that's fine. Yes, sorry.
Hi, my name's Carmine. I'm a pharmaceutical rep, and I drive. Most of my job is driving, and I know the old adage, there's never a cop when you need it, but the Newsday stat that showed Suffolk Police citations as the second lowest in the state, I'm sorry, that is unacceptable for this area we live in. And I know making tougher laws, that might be the answer, and again, behaviors is a big thing, but if the laws change, it doesn't really matter, because if the drivers don't think they're going to pay, like I said, there's so many cars on the road. If they don't think they're going to get caught, what does it matter if the laws are tough or not? You mentioned the safety zones. They had cameras there. It's fines, but it's not points in the license. So who cares if there's fines? It doesn't change driver behavior. Speed cameras, it's only fines. There's no points. Why is there such a reluctance to have tougher laws with, especially speeding on Long Island? Because let's be honest, the lack of enforcement is appalling. I've never seen a cop pull someone over with aggressive driving, and you see it every day long. The Honda Civic, the pickup trucks, driving fast in the right lane. It never used to be a thing. Now people drive in the right lane as fast as they do in the left lane. What about having signs in the roadway saying, right lane is not for passing, it's just for getting off the highway, like education stuff? But I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like there's not enough being done to even address the cause. Everyone just talks about it, but no one is afraid. Never feel like everyone's afraid to actually do something about it. So
yeah. I thought I'd go to Peter because you just wrote on this. What are the numbers? What do they show as far as enforcement here on Long Island relative to other parts of the state?
Suffolk County has pretty low enforcement in terms of relative to vehicle miles traveled or relative to miles driven. The number of tickets, and we looked at tickets for speeding, aggressive driving, DWI, seatbelts, and a couple other things. And looking at those really like core safety-related violations, the number of tickets handed out in Suffolk relative to traffic, it has been low for many years. And I spoke with Commissioner Ryder about it. Commissioner Catalina about it, and he, pointed out that this has been an issue for a long time, but they're doing better relative to where the county was previously. But that said, compared to much of the rest of the state, pretty low. Nassau County ticketing was higher, but hasn't fully recovered since falling during the pandemic. And ticketing fell everywhere during the pandemic. And actually, like New York City, I was really surprised had the largest drop in ticketing during the pandemic of any region of the state, though it's still far higher than Long Island or many other parts of the state. That's the article.
People aren't imagining things when they say that. Yeah. All right. Why don't we go in the middle? So, Bart, this gentleman there, your hand up.
My name is Hal Tarry. I'm an avid cyclist and advocate for cycling and making it safer. And I think we just can't afford to put a police officer every place as much as we'd like to. And I think really one of the key solutions is going to be coming up with the automated enforcement more. But I know there's a lot of pushback because people say that's just a money grab. So recently in Sweden, they tried something where they're scanning the license plates of people speeding or running red lights, and they're also scanning license plates of people that are obeying the law. And the money they collect, a portion of it goes into a lottery so that the people, they pull out a license plate and say, you just got a check. And they said that as soon as they started doing that, they started getting an immediate increase in people slowing down and obeying the law. And even if not everybody pays attention to it, if you have enough people driving at the speed limit, it kind of forces everybody else to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what do you say? Will you pay us to drive well, Director LaBouche? Talk about sort of best practices when it comes to timing and In New York City, they have, what do they call it, the pedestrian leading intervals?
Interval,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you explain what that is? And
It's essentially it essentially gives pedestrians a couple seconds head start when crossing the street, where the signal will change from the hand to the little walking man a couple seconds ahead of the light turning green for drivers. So what it allows is so that people can get a little bit further into the intersection before the cars start moving, so that they're visible, so that they're not just stepping off the curb in that kind of hidden, outside your peripheral vision zone. When the cars are starting to move, they're already, halfway into the intersections, making them more visible, because visibility is a huge factor in safety, and daylighting intersections and a number of other design factors factor into this. But yes, the pedestrian leading interval can allow pedestrians kind of a head start and more visibility to help protect them from drivers who may not be paying attention or aware of what's happening off to the side.
And that is a common tool that we use at our signalized intersections. It doesn't apply in every situation, but it's certainly a helpful tool.
Another thing I saw, I might have learned at one of your seminars, Melissa, is about what do they call these things? It's like a signal, but it's only on when a pedestrian activates it. Otherwise, there's no signal there, and basically it'll allow people to cross a particularly dangerous street when they need to.
Yeah, I mean, like you had mentioned earlier, that pushing the button gives you more time to cross. I think there may be a public perception out there that you push the button and the light's supposed to turn like that, and they push it once and the light doesn't turn like that, and they're like, oh, well, this thing doesn't work. But, what it does is ordinarily the signal is timed for it to optimize traffic flow. But when there's someone trying to cross the street, they change the timing to give you that extra couple of seconds to cross the street. Ideally, you're trying to get, depending on the width of the road, you want to give people, estimate that people are moving at about 3 feet per second to get across the road, to allow for people who are slower, elderly, people pushing strollers, that sort of thing, so they don't have to run across the street. So that's ideally what that timing should be when you push the button. There are some situations where there's always a constant flow, where there's always going to be pedestrian traffic, where in those instances I would recommend always having it timed that way.
Right.
But in situations where it's an occasional person crossing the street, then you push that button and it gives you extra time to get across.
Yeah. We have time for like 2 more questions. A lot of hands. Okay. Why don't we, a woman in the back there.
Hi, my name is Dejanay Vanderveer. I am a victim of a drunk driver. I was at the Symposium earlier for drug driving. I've been advocating for safer streets, more responsible drivers on the road, because my life changed 3 years ago. I lost my legs, both of them, off the Sagittos Parkway. It has been a struggle, but I think earlier you had mentioned that drunk drivers should, or people that are going to drink should be responsible for themselves. I think that is incorrect, as I think the person that you're asking to be more responsible is automatically not responsible. The person that hit me was a military person. He was already at a party with friends. He was from Brooklyn and was way out here. So he was probably speeding to go back home. I think my question for everyone here is, is everyone understanding that when you step out onto the road, you're not, because I drive again now, and I'm still met with people who are flashing me to drive faster. Regardless of how I look, I've actually never been in an accident. Never. But when you're going out on the roads, I think it's important that we're all making sure we care about everyone else around us. Because whether or not could have been seconds and I wouldn't have been here, and everyone else has lost people. So my question, is why aren't we doing any more campaigns, whether social media, when we're forced to look at lots and lots of ads? Why can't we throw an ad in there to essentially remind people to do the right thing when we're on the roads?
Maybe for you, Commissioner, I mean, I guess to get to the education component, the public awareness component, is there more that could be done there?
There absolutely is more. We are working hard with that. We work very hard with our communications to do just that, to try to come up with new words, because people become tone deaf to it. If it hasn't happened to them, it's as if it's white noise. And it's frustrating because as a prosecutor, that's what would happen. I would have victims at the table talking about their loved one, and we're talking about the case. And I said to them, I will guarantee to you, when you go home tonight, you're going to see it on the news. You're going to see it in the paper. That's been there. That's been in the news. It's been on the paper, but it's almost as if this curtain has now opened up and you're seeing what has been there every single day. So we're looking for, are those new ways to get the message out? One of the things I would love to do, and I'm very new to my position, so I'm trying to figure out what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not. Sorry, Walt, but I am. And one of the things that I absolutely would love to see in New York that kind of goes with what you were saying about the campaign to get rid of smoking, they're horrific. Like to see, a lung that's cut up and the esophagus or whatever else, I want the public to see the carnage that happens when a bad decision's made. I don't know if I can yet. So that's like a work in progress. But what I will say is, and one of the things that in my position I want to do is use as a platform for the victims. I want you to be talking to the public, not me, to say, this happened to me. I am a real person. And that's something that we've started, is to try to collect. And I would love to have as many victim advocates who are here tonight that want to be a part of it, to just give us your contact information. Nothing's going to happen tonight, but what we're looking for is to really have people we can lean into, to have those victim advocates who want to be a part of it. I am never going to ask someone who is uncomfortable doing that, because sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's just too raw, it's just too hard, and we are not exploiting anyone. But for those who want to, because it feels as though maybe something positive can come from something horrific, we want to be able to leverage you. It's going to take time, but to me, that is going to make the biggest difference, the biggest impact. And we are working on that, because you're absolutely right. And we're getting into those other social media mediums that maybe we hadn't done so much in the past. But absolutely.
Yeah, good. Glad to make some connections. All right, we have our last question. We're out of time here, so I'm going to keep it back on this side. The gentleman over there. Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for putting this together. I really appreciate it. The roads are very dangerous for pedestrians, and several times I've almost been hit as a pedestrian, or also by a cyclist as well. Okay, and I've pressed that button to cross the street, and what I've noticed is the green lights turn too quickly. I'll have the countdown timer going across, but even there's a problem where not only do you have to look left and right, but you also have to look behind you, because I think it's wrong on how many intersections there's a car that's allowed to make a left turn into the pedestrian. Mm-hmm. So to visually help you understand what I'm talking about, I'm walking across the street and a car is able to go into the middle of the intersection and turn into me if I'm walking. So as I'm walking, I get very nervous. So I've taught myself, while I'm walking across the street, look to my right and make sure that there's no car that's about to go into me. Why isn't it that any of the engineers are not looking into the many, many engineering defects that we have? And that's just one of many. I'm also old enough to remember that in the 1990s on Route 347 between Hauppauge and Smithtown and Lake Grove, there used to be a lot of fatal accidents on that road. that they redesigned those roads that it's virtually impossible now to make left turns. What they did was they have no turn signals, and they also included jug handle turns. So why aren't we doing that on a lot of the roads that are considered dangerous? We should have more jug handle turns and also traffic circles, because that will also decrease accidents. And I've been trying to advocate for that for many years. As Dave Raimondo mentioned earlier, the red light cameras and the speed cameras don't work. Why? Someone mentioned it earlier before. Because all they do is they give fines, but they don't give points. And also, someone who's a dangerous driver will just keep driving because there's no real consequences for that person. But when there's law enforcement, and you don't need to have a cop at every intersection. You don't have to have a cop everywhere. I also remember having cops on the LIE, and even if they pull over one person, that gives everybody else a message. We better not speed because I could be next. So they don't have to issue so many tickets, okay? The red light cameras is just a money grab. So the only thing that was successful was in giving more revenue to Suffolk County. But Suffolk County actually did a red light camera study in 2019, and Newsday reported on that the cameras actually increased accidents, okay? Because what happened was people were stopping at the lights because they're worried about getting this fine, and they're getting more rear-end accidents. And I'll tell you, I've been a victim of rear-end accident, okay? And that causes major whiplash where you're in agony. So it just replaced maybe the T-bone accidents with rear ends, which are just as painful, okay? Other ideas that I want to get an idea what you think about. What about putting more pedestrian bridges? Okay. Also, what about? I remember driving in. I think it was in Staten Island. Okay, where I saw signs that said "delayed green lights." So why not?
Just one
last thing I want to say. We have the technology, and I don't know why no one has thought about this, where we can have speed sensors that will prevent lights from turning green if there are people walking in the intersections and there's still cars in the intersections. Why are we using 1950s technology when we could have sensors that keep all the lights red until the pedestrians are free and clear? And then you allow the cars to go into the intersection. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Stephen Canzaneri here, who is a DOT representative here on Long Island. I think you raised some interesting points about maybe some more innovative road design measures, things like traffic circles, jug handle turns. I know Congresswoman Gillen has talked about more traffic circles. She suggested even putting some on Sunrise Highway. What's the reality of doing that kind of thing here on Long Island?
So when there is an intersection of concern, we put everything on the table. We look at it. And sometimes a roundabout or different things are not always feasible there, but they are on the table and we do look at them. And the gentleman brought up Route 347. That's an ongoing reconstruction there where we are doing traffic calming and other things. As he noted, we've eliminated a lot of left turns. Traffic calming in terms of a raised median with vegetation and a shorter shoulder. Those things are slowing down traffic naturally. They're giving the appearance when people are driving that it is, you're a little bit closer together, so you are driving slower. And we do things like this throughout Long Island. One example I can think of is on the Northern State Parkway in 231, that interchange. We rebuilt that interchange. It was completed in 2019. We installed a median on 231. We redid, and on the ramps, we rebuilt the ramps there. Other pedestrian upgrades and other things in the area. We saw a 100% reduction in fatalities at that interchange, which is a big change. That's a big change to the community, and we are saving lives with that. It's an ongoing process. As my colleague Rob noted, safety is our top priority. Every conversation we have at DOT, on the phone, Zoom, in person, safety is always an issue that we're discussing about. Whether it's highway worker safety, safety of the traveling public, it is what we are constantly striving for out there.
Thank you so much, Steve. So before we wrap here, I wanted to ask one question of everybody on the panel. What is one thing that Long Island can get started on tomorrow that would make our dangerous roads safer? And I'll begin with Robert at the end.
Some sort of universal education program. I think that's the bottom line. We have to get out there and provide more information to youngsters, to teenagers, even to adults, and peer-to-peer education. That works best. I remember when I was in high school and I was driving with a friend of mine and was getting ready to make a left turn, and I cut the wheel while I was waiting, and he said, "You shouldn't do that because if somebody hits you in the back, you're going to be forced into oncoming traffic." Well, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Where'd you get that from? And he had this book of defensive driving, and we went through it, and it just made such a tremendous difference. I'm probably here now because of that study that we did, and then we started riding motorcycles, and we got even deeper into safety and riding techniques and what have you. We have to educate ourselves. It's hard to fix the roads. It's hard to do a lot of things, but if we change our attitude, it'll go a long way to making a big difference.
Alyssa?
I think something that municipalities can do is to look, we talk a lot about, a lot of these road improvements are very costly, involving concrete and curb work and land acquisition, but there's a lot of stuff that can be done cheaply. There's stuff that they call quick build improvements, where a lot of it's done with paint and plastic bollards, and a lot of these changes can be done kind of throughout communities at a very low cost that, maybe in the future it might justify some big expense, construction, but in the interim, we shouldn't have to wait 7 years to fix an intersection. What can we do with paint and bollards and that sort of thing to make crosswalks and intersections safer while we work towards that more permanent solution?
Deputy Commissioner?
I think, safety starts at home, and we all have to be cognizant of wearing our seatbelts, slowing ourselves down. I think that's been it's like what everyone else does is the bad driving, but we got to kind of look internally to see, how fast am I going? It starts at home, and then others will see it.
I think there's a lot of challenges on Long Island, but there's also a lot of resources and there's a lot of energy, and I appreciate, what Newsday has done to bring this group together and share ideas. But I think one thing that could be done is really start to leverage the resources that exist, whether it's the Nassau or Suffolk County traffic safety boards, or your local school for education, or your local highway department or DOT, and really, keep communicating and sharing ideas and trying to push the ball forward.
Major Castillo?
I think one of the most effective and also low-cost intervention technique would be driver behavior, changing driver behavior. If everybody that got behind the wheel made a conscious decision not to speed, drive sober, drive defensively, don't drive aggressively, you're going to see a reduction in serious crashes. It's pretty straightforward. I think it's the low cost. It costs nothing to do that, and I believe it'll have one of the highest percentage rates of success.
Thank you all so much for being part of the conversation. Before we wrap up here, I do want to send everybody to our Dangerous Roads series. In addition to all the stories, great work that Peter and others have been doing here, our data team has been compiling all kinds of data. We've got a heat map of every crash on Long Island going back to 2022. You could see how your neighborhood fares compared to the rest of Long Island. We've got databases on fatal crashes for the year where you could get information about the drivers, about the victims, links to stories, information kept by police. I've got to plug my newsletter. The Dangerous Roads newsletter goes out every Tuesday, completely free. It is a mix of both reporting and some personal stories, anecdotes, stuff like you've been sharing throughout the night. So I encourage you to do that. You can do all of it over at newsday.com/dangerousroads, or just scan the QR code. Thank you again, all of you, for joining me. Thank you for being here, and thank you all for watching.
August 2023 was one of the deadliest months on Long Island in the past 10 years. We investigate the incidents.
I was this close to dying.
The data and the human cost. Dangerous Roads, Deadly Month. Now available at newsday.com/dangerousroads.